Hey everyone, welcome to another Angry Artist podcast. At the time of creating this audio, I am a little sick. I got a cold from the convention, and my voice might be a little bit off. But hopefully, it wouldn't be so off that my concepts here will be misunderstood. For this audio, I really wanted to talk about the idea of logic in art and when to use logic and when not to use logic. And what I mean by logic is artistic choices that can be broken down and decided upon based on rationality. So let me give you an example. Well, the most obvious example would be if I were to draw a human being, chances are there will be features logically which must be present in order to make it read as human. This would mean, for example, proportions, skin tone, and if barring disabilities, you can say there's 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 torso, 1 head. And we could be more specific and say there's eyes, nose, mouth. Now, if we were to start omitting some of these features, we start straying further and further away from what we logically see as an average human being. Of course, again, barring disabilities, we all have a standardized idea of what a human being should be. Now, of course, you can start applying this logical approach to everything in art. So if you were to draw a person with pink hair, you can logically break down exactly what you need to do in order to paint someone with pink hair. So it seems a little bit obvious, right? So why are we really discussing this right now? The answer is I wanted to really put on the table what happens when you start breaking logic for the sake of artistic appeal. I firmly believe that the best artists have the best control of logic. You do not want to paint and draw on logic alone. Now, when you are starting out, and even if you are listening to podcasts and other art tutorials like this, you are most likely going to learn logical approaches. So, for instance, logically, skin tones can be a certain color. Logically, proportions should be under a certain limit and over a certain limit for a normal human being. A forest should have green trees, apples should be red, etc., etc. That's the logical approach. Of course, if you were to paint everything logically, you end up painting things literally. And I made a previous video regarding this. When you simply draw and paint on the basis of logically solving your problem, you starve yourself from a more creative approach to solving the problems. It's sort of like, okay, engineers can build bridges. They could build probably the most functional bridge possible, and nothing will happen, nothing bad will happen, but it probably wouldn't look very nice for viewers. The more interesting solution to building a bridge would be to add a bit of aesthetics in it. Some of the most iconic bridges in the world, such as the Golden Gate Bridge, are very nice looking. They're not just about function. There are a lot of ways to logically build a bridge, but to make it look as nice as it does, they probably had to twist a few things, so to speak. So that's what I really mean. Now, of course, we are not making bridges for cars to drive over every day. In fact, we have a lot more freedom. We don't have a real functionality to it. Of course, there are limits to that. Let's say you're trying to do a concept art for a very specific character, you are limited. However, it's not sort of like a life to death situation, if you know what I mean. So what I'm trying to say is, feel free to take liberties and test your waters. Way beyond just simply learning art theory, I had to really experiment with a lot of styles. For instance, what if I were to hide certain features on a human face and hint at it instead of painting everything 1-to-1 ratio, everything crystal clear? That's what I'm trying to say. You don't want to break logic so much that it starts looking like mistakes, but you want to really push the envelope a little bit. Sort of like making a prettier bridge rather than just doing a functional solution to making a bridge. Another prominent example is really varying your colors. One of the biggest mistakes that a lot of beginner artists do is to think about logical colors for skin tone. I've repeated this many times before, but I'll say it again. There is no such thing as a set skin tone. Skin tone, just like everything else in the world, is subject to lighting environments. If you understand that and get that sort of logic out of your mind, you will open up so many possibilities when it comes to color theory. It may be my sort of approach to art, my personal opinion, but I always favor mood colors over logical colors. Ultimately, as an artist, you really want to portray a certain message, a certain atmosphere. If, let's say, you want to make a scene that is more solemn, more sad, you can have skin to be more blue than usual. You want to push the envelope. Of course, it has to still have a bit of that logic, of course. It can't be so blue that it becomes sort of like a painted version of your character. But you want to just add enough blue that you push that message. And that's what I'm trying to say. There are logical, realistic environments in the world that you can just paint. But in order to be an artist, I feel you could push it even more. And you want to push what is remotely possible in reality. And that, I feel, is what's interesting when it comes to the best artists out there. This pertains to things like proportions as well. And why cartoons are among one of the best media out there. We like looking at more varied styles. We like seeing things beyond logic. No, our eyes probably cannot be half our face size, but a lot of cartooning styles such as anime will do that, and they will still have it reasonable enough and logical enough so that people believe that they're characters, but they're not logical human portrayals. I hope that kind of makes sense. It might seem very obvious, but it's something that, again, a lot of people beginning art, especially students, they're taught how to logically depict things, and that's completely fine. You really want to learn the rules before you break them. But just as a reminder, you want to eventually break them, or else you might become a very boring artist. Anyways, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.